Might do to start with, we're just going to run along, and so welcome Albert, Jon, Joe and Michael. They're just going to run along and give a quick rundown of who they are and that sort of stuff to start with. Thanks, Albert.
G'day. I'm from the Wollongong branch, and I've been breeding finches for about 20 years. I've bred all the bread and butter stuff, and I've been breeding the Siskins for about 15 years, and they're still a challenge for me, so it's kept me interested in Siskins. So every year that I breed them, I'm learning more and more about them, and I'm still learning. So my interest is there, and I'm really intrigued with the Red Siskin. Thank you.
Thanks, Albert.
Hi, I'm Jon Brooks. I'm from the Wollongong Club as well. Yes, I've been keeping Siskins now for about 6 or 7 years. I'd say out of everyone here, I'd be the least experienced in it, but still getting results. I've come from a background of colony breeding Australian finches, doing rather well with it, and decided to get out of that and get into something a bit more challenging, and I certainly found that with Siskins. So, there you go.
I'm Joe Cavill. I've started off in the Wollongong branch as well, and I've come up to Sydney quite a bit. I started breeding finches 58 years ago, and most of the time I've bred finches. I try to keep it in a natural environment. I don't pretty much use any medication. I worm the birds come in August once a year. I don't treat for coccidiosis. I don't treat for anything else. Whenever I move birds around to pair up, I only give them 1 drop of Cydect into the beak, just to keep on top of air sac mite. I have open flight aviaries. I don't heat, I don't colour feed, I don't medicate pretty much. I learned a lot from my father. My father's a pigeon flyer, and he's always trying different things in it, and he's forever saying, you can't beat old Mother Nature. And I bounce everything off that. And I've been feeding Siskins for 18 years. I have reasonable success, I'd say. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm fairly new to the club. Been keeping finches for a few years, not as long as these guys here. I had good success in breeding the Red Siskins the last 2 years. Pretty much in open aviaries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You know what my name is. I've had Red Siskins for probably maybe 7 or 8 years, something like that. I did have them previously many years ago. I probably have more luck than good management with mine. They're in big aviaries, in with colonies, although I do have some in a enclosed aviary in the barn that breed quite well. And is there any questions from the floor to start with? Hang on.
There, Joe. What do you reckon the score will be tomorrow night?
20-0. 20-0 the dogs.
What's the breeding age and the life expectancy?
Breeding age and life expectancy. Someone want to comment?
Yeah, I had a hen. Looked pretty scruffy. I looked up I used to keep a stud book, and it was 9 years old. I've got a hen this year, 6 years old, that produced young. I've got a cock that's 8 years old that produced a fathered young. Usually, the first year is a learning curve for the hens. Like the best hen I ever had, she had 3 fail nests in the spring, and then in the autumn she had 1 nest and she reared the young. After that, I had about, for the next 4 seasons, she bred about 10 every year for me, and then they sort of wind down to a couple of years. This year I had the hen that was 6 years old, only produced 2 young, which is one of my best hens as well. So, but the breeding's probably, they can be good in their first year, but usually it's a learning curve in their first year. Say from the second, third, fourth and fifth years are their best years. And then they could probably still have another nest after that, but that'd be it.
if they're breathing, they're still breeding, but you won't get too many towards the end.
Have any of us ever tried breeding in cabinets?
I gave it a go a few years ago, and as soon as I got them, as soon as they fledged out of the big aviary, I put them in the cabinet straight away to get them used to it. And they never really settled down. They made a nest and just stopped sitting after about a week. So I just gave up with cabinets.
I know Paul, who's actually filming at the moment, has had a go and bred a couple in cabinets simply because I think more of the situation that he's in at the moment with his cages, and there's certainly overseas, they're routinely bred in cabinets. In fact, probably the majority of Siskins bred in the world are in cabinets, and that's really the attraction of us Aussies to the researchers, the Red Siskin Initiative researchers, is the fact that we tend not to breed them in cabinets. Anyone?
Could I just add a bit to that?
Yep.
Yeah, they seem very secretive. Like they nest about 5 foot high, and you can inspect nests because they're open cup nests as easy as you like. They see you inspect the nest, but they don't like you seeing them feed the young in the nest, even though you can see them. I think they like the privacy, and whereas a cabinet, they can't hide really in a cabinet, where in a planted aviary they can hide from you. Could be part of the problem with cabinet breeding.
Also, they're a very high-octane bird. They're always on the move. I don't like the idea of keeping them in cabinets myself because of the fact that it's restrictive for them, and I like to see them getting the full range of behaviour that they can get.
Yeah. Is there anyone else in the audience with a question first, or will? Yeah.
Just information, that's all. The Italians are the Europeans who breed the most of these Siskins, and the top Italian breeder of Siskins in cabinets breeds somewhere between 200 and 300 a year.
Yeah, and I believe in the US they're pretty much all bred in cabinets. All bred in cabinets, yeah. Got a question over the other side here.
Just when you transitioned the young Siskins into the cabinet, did they mature in that cabinet?
As soon as they fledged and they fed by themselves, I put them straight into cabinet about May, and I had them there the whole time till spring. I had 2 pairs, but they were always like really flighty and edgy because that's just their nature. And then I had the little tiny canary pants, but I put all brush on the face of the wire so they'd feel comfortable. And they made a nest, but after about a week of sitting on the nest, she just gave up because they were just too edgy. If you can get them really calm, you might have a chance.
I think I'm about to build a sort of smaller set of aviaries, 4 flight aviaries, but I'm looking for room, obviously, for young. Do you think that would impact the development of young red Siskins from an early age to maturity?
Yeah, if you got a smaller flight cage, you got to get them as young as you can to get them acclimatised by springtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my intention is not just to keep them in there forever and a day. It's just a holding sort of pen throughout the breeding season, just moving them out of the main flight aviary. So that's, I guess, what I was looking for.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fine.
Sorry, I might just add something. In my view, what I found is with red Siskins, probably more so than most other species, I leave them in there. They're still in there. Like the young that I bred this season are still in the breeding aviary. Admittedly my aviary is probably fairly big, but I've never seen a problem with leaving them in. And I believe that's pretty much, I'm not sure about Albert and Jon, I'm pretty confident that's what Joe does, and I suspect Michael as well.
Yeah, I leave the young in with the males and the females. It doesn't really do a lot of harm. I think you reach a point where you need to thin numbers so that there's better chance of continuing breeding, but as far as aggression or anything like that, they're very, very calm that way. They have a little bit of a bicker and that's it. You know, if that. They're pretty well ideal temperament, really.
Back to Jacko over here.
What sort of seed diet do you feed them?
Niger, more, crushed sunflower kernels. Sorry. Niger, more, and crushed sunflower kernels. And some people we feed rape seed as well. That's probably the
Yeah, I think all the black seeds and the sunflower. But sorry, John.
Mine in a mixed colony, so I add those seeds in especially for the siskins, and there's also this plain canary and millets. They do pick at the other seed, but mainly it's the Niger and the Moor and the crushed sunflower.
Sorry.
I feed maggots in my aviaries, and when they got young, they do tend to, I've seen the parents do go down for maggots.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them go and take mealworms, watch them eating them on the perch. Not a problem. But it's only when they've got young. That's it. Otherwise, they couldn't be less interested.
And can each of you go through and tell us exactly what you feed your birds? Because can you do it one by one by one?
Can I suggest maybe we start with the seeds now we're on it, and then we'll get to this, because I know Albert's got quite an extensive collection of green food that he feeds his. Yeah.
Yeah, well, seeds, I only give, excuse me, I only give Niger a couple of times a week. I think it makes the siskins too thin. I give them sunflower kernels, canary seed, yellow millet. Sometimes it's panorama, and they've been eating more panorama than normal yellow millet lately. I don't know why. Red millet, Jap millet, and white millet. I'm not sure which one of those seeds they... And canary, plain canary. I thought because they're a Seren, they go for the canary seed, but I don't think they eat the canary seed that much, but they do eat it. With the... They don't... I put Lebanese cucumber in, because I got other birds in there as well. I've never seen them eat the Lebanese cucumber. I use soft food. And maggots... I've fed maggots for quite a few years. For the first few years, they never touched them. Then for a couple of years, I don't know why, they started eating them. And now, the last few years, they haven't eaten them again. So I don't know why. What else is there? I give them usual cuttlefish, rock salt, shell grit, charcoal, which I've never seen them touch. But that's all in there for all my other birds too. You know, I don't think I've ever seen them go to other rock salt. I don't think I've ever seen them eat cuttlefish, to be honest with you.
I've given basically I don't worry about separating the white seeds. I give them a Finch mix, standard Finch mix. Sorry? A little bit of rape, canary, white millet, Jap millet, a little bit of red millet. Pretty much it's a standard Finch mix. And as I stated to you earlier, I've got one aviary where the siskins absolutely hammer it, the Finch mix, and the next aviary where they eat a little bit, but not a lot. Again, sunflower crushed up. It's actually sunflower kibble, yeah. Yeah. And Niger, linseed. I actually feed a canary tonics mix, which is linseed, Moor, rape, and oats. They're not very keen on the oats, but they'll eat everything else. When I'm feeding soft food, you actually take a leaf out of your book for the black sprouting stuff. I made my own up. It was just live Niger with rape, black and white lettuce seed. I actually added chia to it. Now, chia, the only problem is that it doesn't go fluffy when you've dried it out for a while, because what happens is the coating on chia turns into a gel. So what I do is I put it into clip-lock bags, flatten it right out so it's only less than a centimetre thick, zip it up, throw it flat into the freezer, and just do it bag after bag after bag. And when it comes time to use any of it, I just break a bit off and break it into small enough pieces and put it into the bowls. It thaws out, they go and hammer it. I also mix that with sprouted Finch mix. I think that's about it for the seeds. That's more. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I sort of do the same thing. I give them crushed sunflower, but I grind it in an old coffee grinder because I think it's got to be as fresh as possible. You can buy de-husked sunflower, but I reckon it just dries out. So every second day, I'll put it in the coffee grinder and give it that, and I just love it. When I'm breeding, predominantly sprouted canola and sprouted Niger. That's what I predominantly give mine when they're breeding, and all those seeding things that you see on the table there. Finch mix, separate dish of canary seed, and that's about it.
I suspect that some of my Red Siskins would probably survive quite nicely just on the sunflower kernels. They absolutely hammer them. And it's the product I use is a horse product called MaxiCoat. I think I might have mentioned it here at other meetings. And actually it was Graham Wagstaff put me onto it because I was mucking around with these coffee grinders and that stuff, and I've gone to his place and he showed me this bucket of MaxiCoat and it all looked fantastic, and so I've been buying it ever since. And I've got a huge chest freezer because Stacey Gellis was, I can't remember whether he was at my place or we talked about it online or something, and he mentioned that cracked sunflower, when you look at the use-by date on this stuff, most produce stores will get it in for you, but they don't keep it as a standard product because it has a very short shelf life, only a few months. So I actually buy, I've got a huge big chest freezer, so I actually buy a couple of containers at a time, and I just put the whole container in the freezer. And I just, take it straight, because it doesn't freeze into a block, and I take it straight out of there. And I think that's probably a little bit what Albert was talking about, that they know that the sunflower kernels are no good. The same as, I have no idea how they know, but they know that Niger that's been zapped from overseas, they barely eat it. Whereas you get the fresh Australian stuff, I have no idea how they know, it's beyond me, but there's something we don't understand about that, they pick it up. The other thing I feed, I find they do eat Niger, but not that much. But I grow Niger, and what's interesting is, and I think it's maybe an observation that people have made here, I think they're creatures of habit, more so than any other species that I've seen. So most of mine will have a go at mealworms when they've got chicks, and yet I know other people they never will. I've sold my Red Siskins to people, and I've always give them some of that MaxiCoat stuff. When I sell them a pair of Siskins, I say, take some of this because I know they'll bloody live on this. Because I just reckon they kind of see a new food and they go, I don't know what to do with that, Maybe they need a canary or a red-faced parrotfinch or something to show them that this is food. Whereas other finches, you can buy, say, mask finches, for instance, that have never seen like I've got mask finches that I've bred just on maggots, but if you put termites in there, they just recognise the termites as food. Within 30 seconds, they'll be down eating them, But that's not the case with Red Siskins, and maybe with a lot of these related cup nesters, it's the same. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, hang on, I'll give you the mic.
Just quickly, how long have you been feeding the MaxiCoat for? I know some guys up in the New England area have been doing it for over 5 or 6 years now. For me, it was unusual, but have you been using it long?
Certainly a couple of years. I don't have to be 5 or 6, but it'd certainly be 3 or 4 years. Yeah, quite a while. I'm not sure how long Graham's... Do you know Michael? A long time, I think. Graham's been doing it. Yeah. Oh, look, it's got other vitamins and minerals, but essentially, it's cracked sunflower kernels. That's 99% of what it is. Have I got to walk all the way over there, Brian? Hang on. That's
right. My question's about how they get on with other birds. I've heard stories that you can't feed them on the ground and all that. I've only ever seen a Red Siskin in a cage like out the back there, and I've seen a few in aviaries, but I've never kept them. So I'm interested in how they might get on in a mixed aviary, what you should avoid, that sort of stuff.
Well, I've got 7.2 metre long aviary by 4.5 metres wide. Yeah, I keep other finches in there, but the more docile finches, like your orange breasts, your cordon blues, yeah, you just stay away from like hex longtails, and definitely the red-faced parrot finches. I had them once, and my God, at night you go near the aviary and they just go berserk, and they scare the whole aviary. So you just keep the docile ones.
Yeah, well, when it comes to red siskins, if there's going to be trouble in the aviary, they're not going to be the aggressor. It's going to be something else. I mean, they're one of the only cardulids that you can keep sort of as a colony that, well, they not only survive, but they breed. The rest of them, if you put two males in the same aviary with some females, you're going to have strife and probably a bird's going to die. But with red siskins, they just sort of have a little bit of a spat every now and then they part and everything's cool. And as far as going down to the ground, if you've got a siskin that's sitting on the ground in your aviary for more than 5 minutes, it's probably dead. They just don't like being on the ground. I've got dandelion, which, going into the green side of things, my siskins absolutely adore dandelion leaf. And I've got them growing in the aviary, but they will not come down to them unless they grow damn large, and then even then they'll only eat the tops of the dandelions and they'll leave the rest. They won't come any closer to the ground than that.
Yeah, it's pretty right, but I've got some of mine that come down to the ground a bit now, but it's probably because they've seen the other birds come down. If I throw some seeding grass, I've got a lot of seeding grass growing in my areas. I've got Newcastle grass, Maitland swamp grass, African belt, and they like pit grass too. I got that growing in there. I've got pictures of them hanging off it. But they never used to, because when I got them off Graham Wag stuff, he said they're arboreal and put your nesting material on, just hanging up on the wire on the side, and they come to that and build their nest. But I think because they've seen the other finches, they gradually come down close. I've actually seen them on the ground, but it is pretty rare. They don't like going to the ground. And as far as getting on with other birds, they're not the aggressor. I don't think they only defend their nest against their own kind, generally. They don't like, you don't want birds in there that are inquisitive, like young Goulians, Mike's favourite bird. They can be inquisitive and get in there and have a look. I don't know what damage they do. I don't keep longtails in it, but you don't want a bird that's inquisitive that wants to just roam around like parafinches. You wouldn't put in there. They'd pull in nest a bits to make their own, you know. But they're not aggressive. They really don't attack anything.
Niger and more and sunflower kernels, I always put it up high in the aviaries, and even with seeding grasses, or I give them a lot of thistles in the breeding season, I put it in a jar of water and hang it up high on the wire, and they seem to go for that. Like I had some wild millet growing in through the wire, it just fell on the floor. The siskins wouldn't touch it, they wouldn't go down for it. So they like to have everything up high.
Adding to that, my watering stations are off the ground as well. They're about yay high off the ground. And they don't mind coming there, but I've got a feeling it'd be a very different story if it was on the ground. That would be probably, they would eventually have to come down to drink, but I think it's kind of a bit cruel to force them to do something they're not willing to do.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit cruel because my water's on the ground. But you're right, they rarely go down. Just one point. I think it's important to have extra pairs in the aviary. They don't. A couple of times I've tried pairs next door to each other, and I found the cock in this aviary wants to feed the hen in this aviary, and then you think, oh, and vice versa. So you swap them around, and then they just seem to fall out of love with that one, and they want the one on the other side. So in a sense, it's better to just chuck them all in together. And then the two cocks will have their little bickering, and they seem to sort, you know, they do that as the breeding season starts, I guess, in spring, as they're, you know, later in spring normally they start, I think. They'll sort of bicker and you'll hear them just chatting, but there's never any damage, you know, and they sort themselves out. And I suspect that's an important process to sort of get them ready to go. I'm not sure about the cabinet breeders, how they do that, whether they sort of chuck them in together and let them make their own partners or not. I'd be interested to hear. Sorry, John.
Can you give us a bit of information on nesting material?
nesting material is pretty simple. Coconut fibre, hessian. I just get sandbags, hessian sandbags, cut them up into 6-inch squares, tease all the material apart, throw that in. I bought a pile of kapok on the internet. That's all I give them, and they make perfectly good nests out of that.
Well, there's a cheap way of doing it. When there's clean-up week and people are throwing their old mattresses out, just grab their mattress, just get a knife, and slice open it, look inside it. If it's got coconut fibre and everything, you've got a year's supply. So take it out. You've got the coconut fibre, you've got the kapok, and there's a blue woolly stuff in there too that they use. I put up 3 different lots.
Just be careful of artificial materials, because it wraps around their legs and it's a bastard.
This stuff that the sales table sells is pretty much specifically for siskins. This coconut fibre is fantastic, nice long threads. It's because some of the stuff you get for nurseries, it's all knotted up, and you spend half your life undoing it. And same with the kapok we sell. Sorry.
Yeah, as far as breeding goes, I've been up to Ken Wagland's, and he basically keeps his pairs in separate flights from the last time I was there. Have you guys tried them in separate flights, or you just always keep them in a mixed collection? And what sort of results are you getting?
Yeah, I did a little experiment last spring. I had three flights. They were 2.4 by about 1.5 metres wide. And I said, right, I'll put a pair in each one and see how they go, just for an experiment. Anyway, I'm sitting there October, November, December, and towards the Christmas time, I said, they're just sitting there doing nothing. So I said, I had enough of this. I opened up all the flights, and then there was a big hoo-ha. They were fighting each other. But within a week, they settled down, and each hen went to nest. It was unbelievable. So I just, if you put them all together, it works better.
Again, it's a case of not quite sure why. Some people swear black and blue. Keeping them in single pairs works really well. But, yeah, others, it's keeping them in a flock. So it's just one of those things you can work on.
Yeah, it depends on. I had a really good year. I had, in a 2-year period, I had 150 Red Siskins at my place. I had 18. Gradually over years, I built up to 18 pairs, and then I had and at the end of that season, I ended up breeding. I had a really good year. I bred 46, and usually they nest in spring, like September. And I sold 1 pair, and in August, which is a month early, I had 15 hens build a nest and started laying eggs. So I couldn't sell anymore. So that means I had 30 hens in 10 aviaries with as many cocks. Some aviaries, they were all right. Others, with the best pair, they dominated the cock. And so I had to take, anything that was fighting, I had to take them out. And I ended up breeding 92. That's why I ended up with 150. But that was just, I was keeping a stud book then too. So only with the hens, because I didn't know who the father was, with all the sons in there, So I used to go past, and I've got a bloodline. The right leg's to be bloodline. I put a different colour ring on, and then the left leg is an individual ring. So I used to go inside on a warm part of the day and just flush them off and check the hen, see what the rings were, and that's how I had this Tupperware container with all the aviaries marked on it. I used to mark where the nest was and the hen that come off there. But it was a nightmare, and equal results. I've had, second year I put 4 pair up and bred 22. This year I had 2 single pairs and I bred 2 from each pair, where others in a mixed was better results.
I do know that a flock situation could be affected by a very dominant female, because I've had one. and she pretty much put everyone else from being able to breed properly. So she did well, but everything else in the cage was basically chased away from the food trays. Not that they ever came to blows, but you just dominated them. I think if you haven't got a bird like that in your aviaries, you're probably going to wind up with overall better results. A dominant bird like that would probably breed in a single pair in an aviary.
Thanks, guys. Michael Baker's here. Thank you, Michael. Ex-president, welcome back.
Thanks, guys. With regard, I keep Red Siskins and I do average with them, I think. But I started with a single pair, did well, put a second pair in, no results in the aviary, put a third pair in, and all of a sudden back to great guns again. Is the odd number the key, or is it just more us than class?
You find generally, I found generally, that if you have only 2 pair in an aviary, they're going to fight. But if you have 3 pair, it seems to split the aggression up, and suddenly you get breeding results.
Can I ask, when you have 3 pairs in an aviary, do you find that 2 pairs will breed and 1 doesn't?
It probably does work out that way. I think what you end up with is an alpha pair, a beta pair, and a delta pair. And alpha pair's the most dominant, beta pair's average dominance, and the delta pair's the least dominant. And I think that's what causes that.
Probably depends on the size of the aviary, I'd imagine. Because, I mean, I've been to Graham Wagstaff's, and I know a lot of us here have as well, and walked from one aviary to the next, where he's got 3 cocks and 5 hens, I think he runs. And a couple of times I've been blown away. There's 5 siskin nests, all with either eggs or chicks in this aviary. You walk through the next aviary, there's 5 siskin nests with either eggs or babies. And I'm like, what the hell? This isn't happening at my place. But they're big aviaries, very low stocked.
I was going to say, it's a big aviary setup he's got. It gives them a chance to have their own little territories, and also he's got more than one feeding station. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I've got two aviaries. One's, as I said, 7.2. The other one's 4.8 by 2.4. I had 3 cocks and 4 hens in one, and only 2 hens bred. The other hens just sat there the whole season and did nothing. The ones with 5 hens, 3 bred. The other 2 sat there and did nothing. So I think it's just a numbers game, and the ones that breed, those youngsters are going to tend to breed as well. So it's just hereditary, and the ones that breed will keep breeding next year, the young ones.
I did have an experience when I was breeding Australian finches in colony situations. We had 4 aviaries together, side by side, opened the doors to all the aviaries and put the colonies in. Had a colony of longtails, a colony of masks, a colony of plumheads, and a colony of yellow rumps. Now, when we first bought the longtails, they were hex longtails. You never saw a hex longtail with red beak. They all had orange beaks around New South Wales. We got them in. We managed to get hold of a source for red-beaked hex, and I knew all about the way that you've got a dominant pair and a not so dominant pair and a least dominant pair. With the doorways opened, we ended up with good breeding results from every bird because we had a separate territory for each bird. But they were with the doors open, they still had a flock, so they had the best of both worlds. And we bred hundreds of red-beaked longtails to the point that the price difference between yellow-beaked and red-beaked was, I think it was $70 for yellow-beaked and $80 for, or $90 for the red-beaked when we started. When we finished, that had flip-flopped, and I know that we were breeding hundreds of them, and I can only say that that was partially due to it. We seem to have had that kind of success with colony breeding Australian birds. I'm not saying that'll work with siskins, but it's a possibility.
Quick question on climatic conditions. I know down up in Queensland we seem to have a lot less red siskins up there, and coming down here seems to be a hell of a lot around Sydney and south of Sydney. Anybody got any ideas on whether they're going to produce better in a cooler climate or a more humid climate or what?
Oh, well, New South Wales breeders are better breeders. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the weather. Whether it's probably might be too hot up there all the time. You know, where we get the purple patch sort of through spring. It's good even weather, but I'm not. I don't know.
It seems a little bit strange because where they come from, it's not exactly cool. It's getting up towards the equator, so I just don't know why it would be.
Although yeah, that's right. We believe they're actually up sort of in the hills a little bit. They're not in the. It's not. So it is actually quite dry, and it's actually quite a steady temperature. You know, in the sort of mid-20s all year round, and I think that's perhaps why. I'm not sure about you guys in Wollongong though, because obviously that's different to where Joe and I are in southwest Sydney, sort of that Picton Pheasant's Nest area, and also which is as well where Graham is. But I noticed that when the weather changes, that causes problems for them. I suspect, and I haven't done it scientifically, that's when I lose nests and things like that. Whereas if it's constant, and it can be constant and cool, or it can be constant and wet, but as long as it's bloody constant, when it changes, I suspect, is when they go, stuff this, I'm not going to feed the young, or I'm not going to sit on the eggs, or I'm going to do something shitty to you. Yeah.
Well, with my aviaries, the shelter's colour bond with a sheet of alcinite in each aviary, but the actual flight is roofed in alcinite, so it gets pretty hot in summer, but it is dry. And maybe that's the trick. When in the middle of summer, I've got shade cloth over the top of the aviary, and I do run sprinklers, but only for a minute or two in the middle of the day. I haven't had any losses due to heat so far.
Yeah, Sam. This is for you, Sam. What time of the year do you grow the tiger? Spring, summer?
I try to grow it in spring, but this spring there was no rain. So it sat there and virtually died, the crop that I had. But normally it's spring and it's ready to go, sort of late, I don't know, October, November. But there was literally no rain at my place. So actually it's all seeding now in amongst a whole lot of other crap because it's not really a proper crop. But it's too late because mine have all finished in terms of the siskins. But I freeze it as well. So I freeze the seeding heads, and which when I get a chance, I'll go down and cut a whole heap and chuck it in the freezer for them for next breeding season. Just in terms of the breeding season, maybe we can talk about that a little bit because they've sort of got two breeding seasons. Maybe people can kind of indicate, because I've had mixed, like this year I bred a fair few before Christmas and I've only bred two since Christmas. But talking to other people, they've had the opposite. And to be honest, last year, I'm not sure, I wouldn't guarantee it, but I don't think I bred any before Christmas and I bred 20 odd after Christmas. So maybe you guys comment on that.
One thing I found with the siskins, they like to breed outside where the first rays of the sun that hits them in the morning. And in the summertime, if you have a really, really hot summer's day, if she's got a nest up high, she'll get cooked or she'll leave the nest. So that's why sometimes you'll have a good run before it gets too hot. And when it gets probably just in January, probably like February when it's very hot, they won't sort of breed, and when it starts to cool off a bit, they go back down the nest again. That's how we find.
Yeah, I bred 41 before Christmas and 12 after Christmas. There's they seemed good, nice even temperatures is what they want, like even humidity as well. Like if you can get about 25 to and about say 40% humidity, it would be ideal for them. You know, if you get that all the time, but it ups and downs. Like I was talking to Mike before. I've had 3 fledge 2nd of May, and it was 5 degrees at my place. And it was 6 degrees, and this went on for the last week before they fledged, and I went in there every day expecting them to be dead. And we had rain as well. I got no cover on my flights. The actual nest site's covered, but all inside, all the plants and everything, they're all wet and all water on the wire and everything. But I fledged 3 siskins on the 2nd of May this year, and they're still going all right. So I expect that's the latest I've ever had them nest.
Yeah, I breed half before Christmas, and then mine have a little rest, like the first 2 weeks in January. They just do nothing, just sit there. And then they just start up again. I breed the other half. And I force mine to breed at certain spots because they're going to get cooked. If they always want to breed as high as possible, so I force them at least 600 below the tin roof because they're just going to boil in summer. It's useless. So they'll have their nesting material in their beak, and they'll want to go up as high as they can, but I'll put the wicker baskets, the fake Christmas trees all at one height, and eventually they'll have to settle and nest there, and they don't get boiled to death when it's really hot in summer.
Yeah, further to that, if there's a dumb place to build a nest, a siskin will find it, for sure. I have a catch cage in one of the aviaries, and there was a gap of about that between the catch cage and the alcinite roof. So it bakes in there. Of course, the perfect place for a siskin to build a nest and lay eggs. And another time, I have small feeder doors at the front of the aviary, and I've got a feeder tray on a stand about 4 feet high. I just open the door and feed. But I also used to put a rat trap at the door, and I'd put all my greens in the rat trap and leave it like that. And of course, one day I went to open it, there's a nest there with an egg in amongst the greens that I'd put there the day before. So it makes it hard. But yeah, I usually find that you get the more regular breeding in the spring, and in the autumn it's patchy if you're going to get anything.
Just a question regarding losing chicks in the nest. The main problem I've had is where I lose them around the first, say, 5 days. I found that if they go beyond a week, they're fine, they'll fledge okay. So I don't know whether it's inexperienced hens, chicks chilling. I don't know if you've had the same experience or if there's anything you can do about it.
Yeah, well, just getting past 5 days doesn't mean you got them. Like a few years back, I had 3 nests of 2, fully ready to fledge, and they just stopped feeding them. They're a nightmare, mate. They definitely got a female brain, the hens, mate, that's for sure.
I had a hen, and it was a first-year hen, and it bred 4 young in the one nest. This was in that nest that was at the feeder door, which was great. And they actually made it to fledging, and she forgot to feed them. That was it. All 4 died.
Was the hen, was it?
Yeah.
Can I get us to talk about green food a bit, maybe? Maybe we'll start with Albert, seeing he's brought in all this stuff. Because my experience, pretty critical.
PowerPoint thing, if you want to plug it in.
Has that got a lot more plants and stuff on it? Oh, well, is it a group of pictures or is it a PowerPoint?
No, it's got pictures, and then I'll talk about...
I'll put them up and they can just roll through, maybe.
Yeah, I'll just go.
Just while you're setting up, can you tell us where the favourite nesting sites are? Or what kind of nesting site?
The most important thing with nesting sites is where are they going to get the morning light? If they can get the morning light early, I noticed when I visited Graham's setup that he was pointing out where they would start nesting. It was sort of like where early in the season the light would first hit this section of the aviary, and then later on it would be sort of like it'd extend around, and he'd say nesting would start here and gradually work its way around. But light's very important to where they put a nest. They like to put the nest sort of like, I don't know, where it can get the sun. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, well, I've got these washing baskets I've got up, and I've got full of plastic Christmas trees, and they could build it anywhere in the south, east, west, in the middle. Well, I've got these other nest sites. They're like plastic pot plants. I got them up. They're on the face of them faces the east for the morning sun. But they nest in them because they've got no choice. I've got a path down the left-hand side, so I've got all the nesting stuff on the right-hand side. But I know a lot of them do choose to get the morning sun, but I've got others that have built on the southern side of these washing baskets where there's no sun, and on the western side, and I've got a shade cloth so they get no sun there, and they've reared young in there. So, I mean, a lot of them do prefer the morning sun, but not all of them.
I find mine like to nest in the Melaleuca branches. I cut it in bunches and put in wire baskets. And what I've noticed that I've got like a smaller wire on the bottom of the basket, and they seem to nest always on that wire. And I find it's good for when the chick's just about to jump. They sort of won't just jump out and die, hit the concrete and die, or they sort of jump out into the basket and they've got somewhere to sit for a couple of days.
Yeah, mine, strangely, quite a fair few of them, one line of mine, nest in these. So they build their little cup nest in there. Initially when I saw it, I was a bit scared because I thought, they're like canaries when they put when the chicks get larger, how the hell are they going to feed the things? Their heads are sort of almost touching the roof, but they manage. And I think it gives them that little bit extra privacy. Mind you, it's probably half in these and half are building in the brush on the walls, building their own. Well, obviously they build their own nest in these too, but I found it surprising that they'd take to those.
I'm glad you showed that because I was going to say, way back when I first started, if they weren't doing anything at all and it was breeding season, I'd put in a couple of these, just in amongst the brush. And it was amazing. You'd put it in and within a couple of days there'd be a nest built. And it'd be built there, or there, or there, or there. I think 1 in 10 might have built in the nest basket. But it was just amazing. Just because it was there, suddenly it seems like they started to build.
Yeah, well, half of mine in those straw baskets, and the other half in the artificial Christmas trees that you get at Woolies and that. Yeah, okay.
We'll go through this quickly.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's my 7.2 metre aviary, so I flood it with all different seeding grasses because as the gentleman down there said, the first 5 days they kick them out. You've got to supply, in my view, a whole variety of seeding grasses and you've got less chance of them kicking the babies out because if there's something missing and they can't find the right food, they're just going to turf them out, in my experience. All right, and I'll go through quickly. All right, put on the other one. No, debate. All right. Beginning of January, a year ago, my wife says, "Oh, we're going on a 9-day cruise. It's starting the 28th of December till the 5th or 6th of January." That was last January, and I went, "Oh no, that's the middle of siskin breeding season. I can't go." But you got to have a life, right? And every now and then you got to go on a holiday during the siskin breeding season. So I said, "What am I going to do?" So anyway, I said, "All right. So what grows January and February really, really well?" So swamp grass does. So 2 months before I went, November, the swamp grass just starts to come up. So I got 16 really large plastic buckets. I had my little swamp grass. I got really good potting mix, 2 inches of dynamic lifter, and I'm watering these 16 pots for 2 months. And right when I'm leaving, I just keep it back on that one, Sam. Anyway, and right when I'm leaving, I had this swamp grass growing really high, just seeding. So I put the 16 buckets in there, And then I said to me mate Tony, all right, all I want you to do is just water those pots. That's all I want you to do for 8 days. So I had the water there, the dry seed, checked all the bait stations in case no rats are going to come while I'm away. Anyway, right when I'm leaving, I had 3 nests of siskins just about to hatch, and I was going, cross me fingers. Anyway, go on my cruise for 8 days, come back, and they're all still alive. The whole lot just survived on seeding swamp grass, nothing else. I just had dry seed and water, and I got I got 7 young ones on the perch just with that. So it's just an idea. If you ever have to go away and you've got siskins, plan ahead and you can still save them. So if I'm just going away for a day or two, it's pretty time consuming, but you cut your seeding grasses and you put it in water, and then you put it in your aviaries, and that does all right. Because seeding grasses, if you're home, you put it in morning and then you put another batch in the afternoon, because in my opinion, as soon as that seeding grass starts to die, they don't like it. There's nothing like live seed in your aviaries for siskins. I don't know what it is. It's just the moisture in the seed, and it works for me. Now that's a swamp grass, and it's just a fish box. It's about 500 by 350, and that's how much seed you get just out of one fish box. So that keeps it going. Now that's the swamp grass. When I forgot to water it for 1 day during summer, it just dies so fast. That's me swamp grass at the back of my aviaries that I collect twice a day when I'm at home, so that goes all right. Now I've got here canola. Now that's really good for your birds. There's canola, so I grow that all year round, and I put it inside the aviaries, and everything likes it, snails and all sorts of things. They just love it. Now that's the only live food that my siskins like. They're aphids. Now in springtime, aphids go berserk. So I grow thistle and canola, especially for aphids, and I reckon it really gets them going to start off the breeding season. And I'm just trying to find a way to keep those aphids going, because they only seem to take off in spring. Now that's thistle. They don't seem to like the seed heads as much, but I mainly grow it to cultivate the aphids in springtime. And there's some aphids on a little thistle stem. That's Niger seed. It's all right. They like the seed, but they don't really chew on the leaves too much. So I just grow it for a bit of variety. Now that's chickweed that grows in autumn, winter and spring. Now, what I find with chickweed, as soon as you pull it out and put it in the aviary, it just wilts within an hour and they don't like it. But if you can grow it in pots, they keep chewing it for days and days, and they love it. So that's pretty good. In summer, chickweed dies off, but I've discovered there's another summer type of chickweed. It grows between your pavers and that, and it's really tough. And I grow this summer one when the other one dies off, and they like it, but not as much as the lush winter chickweed. That's another type of seeding grass I grow in containers. It sends out root balls everywhere, and you've got to actually put it in a container or it just goes rampant, but they like that as well. Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but they love it.
Johnson grass.
Yeah, they love it.
Just quietly, given it's a noxious weed, I've got quite a bit of it if anyone wants some.
Now, they love that. This takes off in springtime, and I grow it in containers, and they absolutely love it. I don't know what it's called. I've got a picture of it. I've got a tub there. But it grows all over your gardens. You must recognise it from somewhere. Summer grass, is it? Yeah, well, they love that. They really love it, the siskins. Now, that's crabweed. It spreads. It grows prolifically in January, February, and they love that. So I put that in the aviaries as well. Well, that's just a lettuce that I put in as well for green food. Now, I believe just picking the lettuce and putting it in your aviaries, it's all right, but this way it stays fresh the whole day, and there's nothing like fresh green food. Yeah, well, I tried to use the darker green one, yeah, if I can. And that's my aviary there. I just flood it with all different types of seeding grasses so the finches can pick and choose what they want. And I believe that gives less chance of them throwing their young ones out as soon as they're hatched. That's a Yugoslav cabbage. That stays alive like a bush for 2 to 3 years, and I rotate that in my aviaries as well. That's kale. They like chewing on kale as well. Now they're all my pots that I rotate continuously. Now that's what I breed my. They're artificial Christmas trees, and I hang them and then they like nesting in those, and I spread them apart so no ants, bugs, mice, or anything can go from one tree to another. And they've virtually got to crawl on the roof to get to the siskins. So I find that really good as a vermin protection. And that's just showing them how they're apart and each tree is separate. And that's the end result when you get the little ones on the perch.
Thanks, Albert. Albert, it was actually... It was actually Albert that kind of caused this, because I was down at Wollongong and heard him speak, and I knew that he was a builder who wasn't able to sort of service his birds each day, and I'd always sort of assumed, well, he probably feeds a fairly simple diet. And then he showed me this. I'm like, my God, look at the guy's running a nursery basically in his backyard. So it blew me away, and I thought, what a good idea. Just keep all the pots, and then he just rotates the pots each weekend. Sounds brilliant. Just in terms of green food for me, I'm a little bit quieter. Obviously, I try to feed the Niger when it's seeding, but the staple for me is the milk thistle for siskins, and I do like Michael mentioned. So a peanut butter glass or whatever jar with a bit of wire around it that's basically hanging on the wire up this high, as high as I can put it, and I'll just put some fresh stuff in there each day. But milk thistle I find is the best. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but maybe we can move down the line briefly.
Do you plant your plant pots on the ground?
No. I've got them about 500 off the ground, so I can make sure that no vermin are hiding there, and that it doesn't get too damp and cause disease and stuff. And plus, the siskins they like to eat up high as well.
Yeah, again, it's individual variation. Sam's birds like milk thistle. Mine go absolutely nuts for dandelion, along with the seed puffs. But the dandelion that has the leaves that... There's two sorts. There's one dandelion that has leaves that lie flat to the ground, and they're kind of hairy, and it sends up a flower spike that it's wiry, and it branches, and there's a flower at each terminal end of the branches. They hate that. They won't touch it. They need the one that where the leaves grow more vertically out of the ground, and it gets a single stalk with a flower on top. When it needs another flower, another single stalk with a flower on top. They're thick, fleshy, and hollow. And my birds can't get enough of that. They also love green chicory. Again, they love it. And Queensland Finch Society had an article about both of those. Their nutrient profile makes them excellent sources of calcium, because they're high in calcium, but they're also high in phosphorus and I think it's manganese or magnesium, yeah. They're in the right proportions for a bird to have maximum pickup of calcium. Another thing that I'm just trialling, as I said, green chicory. They're also eating red chicory now, the outside leaves. You've probably heard of it. It's radicchio. It looks like a little red cabbage. Well, if you grow the entire plant, it turns into a plant that's about 1 metre across. and it gets leaves that are about that long and about that wide on the outside of the plant. Yeah, I picked off just one leaf like that and put in with green chicory and dandelion and sow thistle, and actually I did it 4:30 yesterday afternoon. I put all that in a bottle. I don't throw my stuff on the ground or on flat on anything. Put it in a bottle that's got water in the bottom of it, and the bottles are all square at the base with a narrower neck, and it's just full of water. I stick them in so that they don't deteriorate over time. Anyway, it was after 4:30 when I put all these green leaves in, so they didn't have a lot of time before it got too dark and they had to settle down. And I finished night shift this morning and came back to the aviary. That would be about 7:05, and there was half of the leaves were gone. I went to sleep, woke up at 12. All that was left was the stems. There was nothing else. Never underestimate how much siskins like greens. You really got to give them the greens.
Yeah, I agree. The milk thistle I feed will be completely just a stick.
Yeah, when it comes to green leafy material, they'll eat just about anything that you'd eat, but I tend to limit the stuff that has oxalates, like silver beet and spinach, things like that. I really don't give them much of that. But they get just about anything green and leafy, they'll eat it. Also, broccoli florets. Love broccoli florets when they're breeding. And you'll see, you put in your floret and leave it for a while, come back, and it'll look like a slightly green piece of cauliflower, because they've eaten all of the little flower buds off the top. And they just hoe into it.
Thanks, John. Is that, you guys got something you want to add about green food, and then we might wrap it up, or we're going to be...
Oh, yeah, like...
the sun will come up and I'll be in trouble.
Yeah, right. I grow a few different seeding grasses in the aviaries. African belt grass is a good one. That's that one he's got here, the one over at the end there. It'll grow in the shade as well. You haven't got to have it in the full sun. Usually you get thistles, but thistles eventually run out, so that grows in there. Then the next one that comes through is this, I think it's Newcastle grass, like it's got a purple seed on it. And that grows in the spring and gets through to about summer. Then probably a month after that, seeds, there's swamp grass. It grows taller. Similar to that, but it's got a pink seed and a light green leaf on it. That gets me through to the autumn. And then if I've got nothing, I'd give them some of the Chinese vegetables and hanging them up on the wall. Thistles are good, but I used to have a lot growing in a few acres next door, but I sold that and I can't get my thistles in any mows them all. So just give them what you can. You know.
Just what Joe was saying about the seasonal stuff. I feed mine thistles and dandelions and all those type of seeding grasses, whatever you can find. And the main thing I feed is another green leafy. It's endive. Endive. Yeah,
that's true. Endive is one that they love too.
It's not hard. It's not tough. They just pick it off it pretty easy. Yeah.
You can get it from the shops, and I think Uncle Stanley, wherever he is, he was here. Where's he gone? Yeah. I'll just say what he put me onto is he found a jar that fits the whole endive in it. So you fill that with water and you stick the whole thing in the jar. There he is. And it works like a beauty. I've been doing it for ages now. I used to pull the leaves off and they're gone by the end. Instead, you shove the whole thing in and it lasts for a week. Anyway.
Just a word of warning to everybody. Be very, very careful feeding green food that you get from a supermarket or a shop. I've done that and lost birds because they put a preservative on it to stop it from going fungusy and keeping it sort of green things for a long time, to preserve it so they can sell. And I once lost 16 birds in one night by greens that I bought from a Fleming supermarket.
Better to grow them yourself anyway, isn't it? Take Albert's advice and grow them yourself. Is there any final comments anyone wants to make out here? We'll wind it up. Thank you very much, guys. I've just got some So, can I get you, perhaps Paul, to actually take a photo of everyone once they've got their certificates? I do the magazine too, you see, so you're always after. Oh, geez, I've just broken yours, Joe. Too bad if you want to hang it up. Thank you, John. Thank you, Albert. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.